Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Keith.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Pauline from In Control Scotland, and I'm joined by Keith. And you want to say good morning?
Yep. Good morning, everyone. Welcome.
We are here on a slightly grey and drizzly Wednesday for our webinar Wednesday session today, and going to talk all about option 2 from self-directed support, sometimes known as an individual service fund. Aren't we, Keith?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you're joining live and this is your first time, then be aware that you can make comments. You can make any comments. You can ask any questions. There should be something in the right-hand side of your screen which is allows you to make comments. And here's our first comment coming in. So Liam's just saying good morning to us.
Good morning, Liam. And as with all of these, you can join in the conversation, ask questions, definitely encourage that, and feel free just to say hello. If you don't have any questions, just let us know you're there. Nice to see folk joining us from all over the place, as always.
And we used to do this every week, but this is the first of the year for us, isn't it? The first webinar Wednesday of 2022. So webinar Wednesday is back. It's going to be on the first Wednesday of every month from now on again, but just a monthly thing rather than a weekly thing as it was at some point during the pandemic. As we now move out, maybe hopefully more into the world and do other things as well, it's going to be a monthly webinar Wednesday on the first Wednesday of the month. So Mark's saying good morning.
Good morning.
And June is saying good morning to all our lovely viewers, and it's good to be back. So
excellent, thank you. And as always, our June is keeping a wee eye on the chat, and you'll see her joining in, sending links, being our eyes on the ground. So definitely join in the chat. But before we've got a guest coming along this morning, Frances Brown from Radical Visions, who's going to be part of the chat about option 2. She's a wealth of knowledge in that bit of practice. But before that, we could just tell you a wee bit about what we've been up to over the last wee while. We've had Christmas and New Year and everything in between since the last time we did the webinar. And it's been a busy start to the year, hasn't it, Keith? We've been up to loads.
Yep. As usual, lots on. And I think we were just reflecting on the fact that since last time we did webinar Wednesday, the Partners for Policy Making group that started, the longest ever Partners in Policy Making group, a group that started in what would have been autumn 2019, managed to complete their Partners in Policy Making program journey in December, just before the Omicron, I can never say that very well, I don't think, before the Omicron variant became widespread. So that was really good that group managed to get through that and actually graduate in person in December 2021 there.
It was brilliant, and absolutely a brilliant achievement. We were all had a wee laugh about how it took them almost 2 years to do an 8-month program. So they're well qualified. They've definitely, if you look up the definition of the word resilience, I think you'd see our Partners in Policy Making crew, class of 2021, because they really stuck through it together. And that's one of the brilliant things, isn't it, about Partners in Policy Making, is the connections and the community that forms throughout it. And it was just brilliant to see everybody, bunch of people who probably wouldn't have met otherwise, working together really positively and supporting each other, and that'll continue long beyond any programs that we offer, which is fantastic. So it's brilliant.
Yeah, and we've also been continuing with the Working Together for Change program, haven't we, Pauline? So that's another group who actually restarted. Some of them restarted because some of them were on a program that we were doing before the pandemic, and then others were new to it. And they're due to complete their Working Together for Change program at the end of March, and we are planning, and our plans are, and we are very hopeful and expectant that the last 2 sessions are going to be sessions in person. So meeting at the end of Feb and meeting at the end of March.
And that's been another great space for people coming together who probably wouldn't meet otherwise, and working on some really exciting change projects, aren't they? They've got one group looking on how to make decision making more inclusive and better, and one looking at how children and families can be supported better through SDS. and another bunch looking at unpaid carers, how we can make unpaid carers more able to access self-directed support. So some really exciting projects going on in there.
Good. And hopefully the purpose of that is to see some change, to see some more positive things happening for not only for the people who are on the program, but for the people who are touched by them or linked to them and
that's something. Sorry, and that's something, because it's the first time we've ran it properly, we're dead keen to do it again. So hopefully, if you've been following us and think this is something you'd be interested in, pending some just getting all our ducks in a row, we'll hopefully be able to offer that again in a few months' time, be opening out for recruitment for that. So running our second cohort of Working Together for Change in the not too distant future. So keep your eyes peeled if you're into that. But the other thing we've also still been continuing, and folk might be interested in, is the lunchtime sessions for children and families. So they're the last Thursday of every month, just a wee hour and a half chat about particular areas of practice related to children and families. And we always bring along some interesting speakers who've got experience of either receiving support or delivering support or doing some interesting work for children and families. So that's going to continue up until March, and then another one that we're keen to continue on next financial year as well, isn't it?
And there's June just commenting about the news brief, saying that people will be able to hear about any of these things in the new news brief, monthly news brief, which is coming out soon. The next one's coming out soon. So if you're not linked in to getting that, just contact the info address, and June will put it on the mailing list for the news brief. So I'll just put the address in the chat there whilst you're talking, Pauline. Because the other thing we were noting is that the consultation for the National Care Service and the things and the associated changes linked to the National Care Service, that the consultation summary came out yesterday, didn't it?
Well, it was the individual responses get published yesterday, so I think there's over 1,000. You can go and read what people are saying and thinking about it. Wow. Which is really, if you've got a few hours or days to spare, you might want to have a flick through and read some of them. But really interesting reading, and the minister put a wee description at the beginning, just saying thank you for all the responses. There's a lot of enthusiasm, but some people, and this is the point of consultations, isn't it, to understand different viewpoints and what some people think are a bit risky, what some people think are really positive. So some dead interesting reading, and I think the first full summary document will be coming out quite soon, in the next few weeks, hopefully. So we might take that opportunity to have another webinar Wednesday on that, just to talk about what people are saying about it and how it might look and feel for in the world of self-directed support in particular. That'd be a good chat to have. So a really interesting and exciting time for the world of social care. And there's Jim put a wee link in.
Again, there's the link. Yeah. So that's the link for the consultation. How many did you say that? I mean,
over 1,000.
Yeah. So I suppose that just reflects the enthusiasm and the great contribution that people are trying to make there towards the National Care Service, and trying to make comments that they think will improve things for us all in Scotland, really. For social care into the future. So I'm still hopeful about that. I'm still hopeful. I'm still hopeful about that happening. I'm still hopeful about the positive changes that will happen with that. And
absolutely, yeah. And from the speaking about Scotland, actually, it's just reminded me that we think about self-directed support and National Care Service and social care in Scotland, but there's some dead interesting conversations going on about self-direction in different places across the world, isn't there, as well? And we were at a really interesting chat. Was it just last week? From
last week, yeah.
A speaker in New Zealand talking about what they're doing. And there's a programme of events as well. 1,300 responses recorded, June saying, geez, that's loads. Sorry. Gobsmacking, isn't it? But yeah, some really interesting chats going on through one of the projects that we are involved with, bringing experiences of self-direction from different parts of the world and talking about it. And there's a lot we can learn from what other people are doing, and how we can share it. And there's June sent the link to self-directedsupport.eu. Definitely get involved and go along to those. They're free webinars that are held. There's one once a month, and the next one is a speaker from Australia. So dead interesting.
And that's later on this month, isn't it? That's later on in February. But I think we were saying it doesn't show up on. If you go to that www.selfdirectsupport.eu and go to the events, then you will see the events. But that one isn't up there quite yet, is it? But it will go.
It's not. It's on the 22nd of February at 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
So keep a wee eye out for that. We'll stick a bit of information about that in the news brief that's just about to come out as well. So folk can join in.
Okay, so I think it's probably time to welcome our guest, isn't it, Polly? Anything that you wanted to say there?
No.
Okay. Let's bring our guest on for this week's webinar Wednesday. Frances Brown from, as you said, from Radical Visions. Frances, who's a long. Hi, Fran.
Hello.
I was going to say a long association with In Control Scotland.
Yes, It's very close to my heart.
Okay, well, that's good. So do you want to introduce yourself first, though? Do you want to just say hello to everybody?
Yeah. Hello, I am Fran Brown. As you both said, we have an organisation, John Dalrymple and myself, have an organisation called Radical Visions, and we have some folk who are also working with us as part of Radical Visions, which is great. And the secret's in the name. We have some radical visions, but we don't really think they're that radical. We're maybe radical 20, 30 years ago, but we feel we still need to be saying they're radical because we're still working on them 20, 30 years later, trying to help those visions become more and more mainstream and available for everybody, and just what we should be doing every day in terms of social care. So John and I work away on all sorts of different projects to try and move those, that radical vision along. Really, that's our aim, and work with lots of different organisations to do that. So, and individual service funds is, one of the things that I am very passionate about, because I work for an organisation called Inclusion Glasgow, which was set up in 1990. I'll get this wrong, 1996. And Inclusion Glasgow, I think, can take the credit for inventing what we would call individual service funds at the time, and that was because direct payments weren't available to people who had a learning disability at the time. And as an organisation, when we set the organisation, Simon Duffy set the organisation up, and I joined them really early on in that process. We wanted people to be in control as much as possible when we were providing any kind of service to those individuals. We wanted to make sure that we set the whole organisation up in a way that would enable people to know what money was available for them, be able to use that money differently. And so individual service funds were created really as part of the work that we did, and then adopted, I think, as a way of kind of managing the budget with a third party, with somebody helping you do that, rather than what was only available before, as I said before, in 1996. I think direct payments had just come into play, hadn't it, in 1996. So, and as I say, it wasn't available for people who were alert. So it was very early on, and what we wanted to do was find ways of recreating that, all the benefits, but supporting people to do that with a variety of support available to them in terms of family or people around them, with a variety of ability maybe to think about the money and all of that, because it's not easy for everybody to do that. So that whole, really widening it out so everybody would be able to get access to it. So we worked really hard to learn how to do that, and we created what we called an individual service fund, and that kind of fed in. I'm glad to say, I later on with John was involved in leading with In Control Scotland, which is why it's so close to my heart. Way back at the beginning, the first 3 years, John and I were the development leads for that, part-time from our jobs that we did before. And a big part of what we did at that point was really try and promote self-directed support in general. So it was very much that, but we were saying, look, there's this different way of doing it as well. There's this individual service fund, there's this option too, which really wasn't around. And that became, I think, one of the new things that was obviously brought into the legislation. That was the impact, I think, that we were able to have in control. Scotland was able to have, and collectively all the organisations that were involved in that, and people that were involved in promoting that. So
maybe I'll share a wee graphic about that, just where that fits in then, Fran. Yeah, but I suppose just reinforcing what you're saying about giving people a similar level of choice and control, even if they choose not to take a direct payment, or they were deemed not to have the capacity as well. We have got a few people saying hello. We've got Liam saying hello to you there. We've got Ashley saying
Liam.
Hello.
Hi, Ashley.
Got Ashley saying
hello. Hi, Ashley. Hi. Long time no see.
Yeah, and then we've also got the other reflection really bit was this idea that option 2 in an individual service fund we were describing it as the missing piece of the jigsaw almost, weren't we, at the time as well? The extra bit that would be there that would allow more people to have that, to be able to have that choice, control, flexibility, and freedom that we all envisaged from self-directed support.
It felt a very two-dimensional system, didn't it? I mean, I think if you had the capacity, or you had that you wanted to do this and take the responsibility on, or you had family that could do that on your behalf, then a direct payment, as it was, or even in if you under self-directed support, a direct payment is something that's available to you and that you would maybe want to take on and tackle. Otherwise, everything was just arranged for you. Really, that would be your choices, and there was nothing really in between. So I think we felt quite passionately, and I still do, that option 2 was the secret to widening self-directed support across, so that it was available for everybody. It was a way of actually achieving that. And if you look at the 4 options, if you look at that collectively, and they were all in place and people were able to get access to them and use them well, then everything would be covered, from people being able to take that choice and complete control themselves, right through to actually option 3, where everybody should still be thinking much more flexibly and creatively around how we're supporting people so that they get as much control as possible. But at the end of the day, there's a massive opportunity at option 2, where people, where if we change the way we behave, we change our systems, we change how we work to enable people to take that control instead of us taking it over everything, the money, all of those things, then people are able to take up self-directed support in a way that they're not able to at the moment, I think. And I think it's still missing. I think that's one of the big keys to unlock. I think you say that in a lot, is that a key to unlocking self-directed support for everybody is option 2. If we could work out how to help people see that would be good. That's your 4 options. Yep.
So just, I suppose, taking it right back to basics, Keith, are you able to make that like a presentation so we can see the text on it? Because it's quite a wee bit small.
Is it still a wee bit small? Yeah, I can't. I think I can. Yeah, hang on a second then.
If you can't, it's okay. We can read it out. But just take it right back to basics for people who are thinking, what are these folk talking about? There you go. There's 4 options in self-directed support. First one we've already talked about being a direct payment, and it's a second option that we're really honing in on today, where the person directs the available support. And like Fran said, this is designed to be really the best of both worlds, isn't it? Where you get the full choice and control and self-determination and self-direction over what your support looks and feels like, but you're not responsible for all the maths, essentially, aren't you? You're not responsible for paying employees that you might hire, but you still should have all that same. And who is it that can administer an individual service fund for a person under option 2, Fran?
Well, I don't think there's any limits to who can administer it. I think that's the reality. I think a lot of the people that mostly have the contact with people and already are engaged with people are providers, people that are already in that position. But local authorities can administer it as well. Brokers could administer it on somebody's behalf. There's no limits to it, and I think as long as the essence and the values that are that underpin it are being followed, so that people are getting the best, it doesn't really. I don't think there should be limits to it. I think it needs to be as wide as that, because I think that's what makes it work. Really, that's what makes. But I think the reality is there's a lot of providers already in a position where they have a contract and they're supporting people. So if we could shift that from option 3 to option 2, an individual service fund, then I think that would be a massive place to start. But there's nothing to stop other people, other organisations, local authorities themselves being involved in that management. And the other thing is, obviously, people don't need to employ their own staff. I know you were saying there about the finance. It's finance, but it's also about the, as you can imagine, even at this point when employing staff is such a difficult thing to do, even just recruiting, and if you're trying to do that for yourself, but people are very daunted by the idea of having to be an employer and employment law and training people and all the legislation that is in place rightly to make sure that we do that well for people that are employed. So that's a massive thing to ask people to take on. So I think one of the, the other major thing was that there's no expectation here that people employ their own staff. That's done on their behalf. That responsibility is taken away. So you get the benefits, as you say, without the responsibility. That's really what you're creating here as much as possible. And there's a cost for that. I mean, obviously providers then are still providing that service, or a broker would be providing that, however that's being done. There's a cost, so there's a cost involved in it, but I think you just need to acknowledge that. It's not, obviously that makes sense, and you're getting a service that's about what you're paying for, and you've been clear about that and transparent about that, and letting people know that's the cost that's attached to that service that you're offering people. This is a great picture. I love this picture. I don't really get it yet, but I do love it. This is one of the things that I think that one of the problems is that we don't always know what we're talking about. When I say we don't know what we're talking about, I mean we can be talking about different things. We think we're talking about an individual service fund, and I'm talking about one thing, and somebody else has got a different picture of what it is. It's a slightly different picture, or it's not quite defined, or we're not quite clear enough about what it is. I think that is something that you find a lot. People still don't, aren't able to kind of get their clarity about what an actual individual service fund is, what's the difference between that and other things, how would you make that work? And then so it easily becomes, it's too difficult, or we'll just make it up, which is another thing. We'll just call it an individual service fund. We'll call it option 2, but actually it's not really option 2. So I think defining it, we felt when we did, just Sam and I wrote a paper around individual service funds, which was very much about trying to simplify the idea, make sure people could see what should be, you need to look for if it is an individual service fund, what you need to do if you're a provider, right, or somebody else in a role that's providing and supporting people with individual service funds, or even if you're the commissioner, what is it you should be expecting if you're a commissioner in option 3, in option 2, as opposed to other options, and what should it look like. So.
I'm just going to putting up there. So that's a link to where you can actually get that paper.
Yeah.
So you can access it there. You can access the paper there, and these graphics that we're using today. So this one is one of the ones that's taken from the paper. I'm just thinking, shall I share the one that's got the 4 key components as well? Just now? I think that's a nice one to share as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do that. So here we are. and I'll also make it big. So the only thing I'll make it big, right, so that everybody can see it bigger. It just means that I can only see the slide at the moment. So I can't.
All right, you can't see us.
No, that's just one of the.
What a shame! What a shame, Keith. I bet you're disappointed.
Well, of course, I can't. But yeah.
We can still see you.
Yeah, well, that's okay, right? Okay, okay. I'm on my best behaviour anyway.
Yeah.
Good.
Don't forget that we can still see you.
Yeah,
So,
right. Okay. Okay, so this is a slide from the individual service fund. What's our making self-directed sport work for everyone, isn't it? It's like so this is a slide from that document as well. So this is in there, and it just really identifies the 4 key components that you would say need to be in place for you to be able to reasonably describe it as an individual service fund. But it's also key components of any aspect of self-directed support to some extent, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, I think it is interesting to do. You're obviously trying to kind of through the paper. If you go and look at the paper, you'll see it is aimed at people themselves. It's aimed at families. It's aimed at providers, and so that everybody can have a look and see what from different perspectives they should be looking at so that we get that same picture, not that odd picture, but the same picture, but actually for them just describing very much self-directed sport in itself, but then bringing it into the idea of, well, what happens when that third party is involved. And I suppose, so you would go in and people would say, I have an individual service fund, and I have option 2. And when you went in and spoke to them maybe about what their support was like, or how they were managing the money, or any of those things, nothing really was very much different from an arranged service. So I think being able to describe these things and say, so do you know how much money is available for your support is a really good question. If somebody doesn't know how much money is available for the support, if they're not involved in that discussion about the budget and how it might be used, how that actually connects to their lives, their outcomes, the support that they're getting to help them achieve that, then obviously I would suggest it's not an individual service fund. So I think if you go around each of those and you ask similar questions around each of those, you can similarly say, well, without that piece of the jigsaw, it's quite hard to say that this is actually an option to an individual service fund. So again, flexible support. I mean, it's okay, I think, for organisations to say this is what we do and this is our service and this is what we provide. But if you're providing an individual service fund and managing that for someone, what you want is that organisation or whoever's doing that to help them achieve that flexible support. They shouldn't have to be fitting in. They shouldn't just be getting. You can't be saying, well, you can have everything you want under an individual service fund, be great and whatever, but you can only have it, 1 hour between 9 and 10 in the morning and an hour at such and such. And that isn't flexible support. That isn't looking at the individual. That's people fitting in to services. Now, that's not to say those services aren't valid and might be part of somebody's individual service fund and part of their support arrangement, but it isn't an individual service fund in itself if you are really rigid and people aren't able to get the kind of flexible support they need. When somebody's needing things, it's about really looking at that individual, isn't it, and saying what is it that's important to them, not that they should be fitting into the service that's available. Focus on a good life's the biggie for me. It's like, and what else? So what else are you actually managing to focus on in terms of outcomes? How's your budget helping you achieve that? Are you able to even have those conversations about how they're able to achieve that? Because that's the beauty of self-directed support. That is the difference that's been created in the system and is still missed. It's not just all about hours of support. It's not all just about, managing your care needs. It's about helping you get that good life. And if you're not able to do that, then I again would be challenging that and saying it's probably not an ISF. If you're not getting access to that ability to say, actually, this this is a much better way of using my budget, a much more cost-effective way to help me achieve what I need to achieve in my life, and then it's probably not an ISS. And maximum control, I think it says maximum control because that will be different for each person in each situation. But what you want to see is that people are very clear about who's in control, where decisions are being made, how decisions are being made. Is that control and decision making moving? As people maybe feel more confident to take on things, is the systems in place to help people do that? Are we having those conversations? That's even if people around somebody are taking a lot of those decisions, which happens now all the time, where people who don't have a voice. It's about really making that transparent, I think, and in a way that it isn't necessarily always transparent now. It's just kind of done sometimes and happens, and people make decisions on folks' behalf. But I think this really flushes that out. How is the person in control? What areas are they in control? How are we helping them take more control? If they're not, who else is doing it? And how we're involving them in what's happening and making sure they're at the centre, really. And that maximum control, as much as people can and want it. That's the other thing, want it. So there's a whole discussion here about what do you want to do? What do you want information? Some people say, oh, don't bring me that information. I don't want to know. Just would you please just do that, and that, and just let me know at the end of the day what's available for me to do this with, or what, how my budget's doing or whatever. Other people want to be in about all of it and want to really manage it. It's a spectrum really of control, and it's about for each person knowing what that should be, and that should be part of the plan. It should be clear as part of the plan. I think if you put those four things together, you can see that provides a very different way of working to often what people get when they're being supported by a provider, when it's under just option 3 and arranged support.
Yeah, and maybe in a little bit, Fran, you can just give us some examples of how people have put those things together to get that good life that you've described there. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because that maximum control doesn't mean that everybody always does everything themselves, as you're saying, is it? It's a bit like independent living being misunderstood as meaning that independent living means living independently without any support, which isn't what life's about. It's about interdependence, and it's just about it's just about being able to have the decisions that you want to make, and sometimes actually saying to somebody else, I want you to make decisions about that because that's not my bag, but the person is involved in deciding that themselves.
I mean, one of the things that's missing, I think, a lot is that when you put the slide up there earlier on with the 4 options, is the discussion with people about what is self-direct support, what are the options, what makes sense to you as an individual, or you as a family, your situation, so that people can really make those informed choices. So some people will absolutely still want to be more in control and of everything and take an option 1, and that makes sense to them. But an awful lot of people, I think, if option 2 was available to them, they would absolutely opt for that, because it's that lack of worry that it allows people to have the control without the responsibility and worry in the same way. But I think those things aren't even discussed really very clearly or openly with people. I don't know that is happening, so people don't really understand that it's even available to them.
So why is that, Frank? Because that's an interesting. So I'm just going to stop sharing, and to bring us back. And in case I forget, what I'm going to do is say that the people can get the booklet at this electronic address here. But if anybody who's watching this now or when it's recorded later wants a printed copy of it, we actually printed some copies for some events just prior to pandemic, so we still have some printed copies. So if anybody wanted a printed copy of the Individual Service Fund booklet, then they should just get in touch with the info at address that June shared with us earlier on in the discussion. And I'll also bring down. Sorry, I just need to go and get some copies just to show people what it looks like as well, because I've got a copy, but just not immediately to hand. But just while I'm doing that, why do we think, anybody, all of us really, why do we think it hasn't been as taken up in the way that we aspired, hoped, were anticipated really with the self-directed sport legislation and subsequent practice that's developed around it. Just any thoughts on that, and I'll go and get a copy of the brochure so that people can see it as well.
Thanks, Keith. So I wonder if it comes back to some things further up the process, I suppose, before you get to the point of even offering options out to people, which are, if an individual service fund is about a whole person's life and all of their assets that they have in their community or their family, all the things they might need that aren't service related to help them live that good life. If we're having this conversations really early on that are only about services, then we're really missing an important part of the picture that is really critical to a good individual service fund. That's one of the things, if I wonder, that actually there needs to be a bit of different thinking early on in decision making about what somebody actually needs. Is it a service traditionally? And if so, great, because that's what a lot of people need. But is there something a wee bit different? Are we talking about the examples of things like horse riding lessons or gym memberships, all these different things that add value to people's lives and aren't necessarily a support worker sitting with you to do it? It's about using normal resources and assets that are out there. But what do you think, Fran?
I'm looking distracted, and I'm distracted, and not distracted. I love this. Right, I use this a lot. I actually started using, I think, Lou Close, who's also an associate with with yourselves, and I did some work with the NDPI, and she came up with this, and it's just a one page around planning. But one of the things that you're talking about there is this here. This is what we do. What is not going well? Statutory and paid support. The wrong side. Is it the wrong side? This bit here. And what we should be doing is all of this, where we're actually thinking about how, what matters to people. Oh, math. Hello.
Sorry, I put you up there, Fran, so that people could see that more big, so that people could see the graphic.
God. I thought I'd gone out.
You hadn't got it, just so people could see the graphic, just for a second.
I'll put it down. Sorry, right. Do you want me to do that again?
Yeah, okay. And just...
Will I do it again? No.
Okay,
anyway,
we'll go out just for a second.
I'll do it again. Yeah, right. That's it. So, this is a wee bit back to front. But instead of looking at what matters, how do you stay healthy and well, looking at all the resources that people have got and what's going well, we go right to this other edge here. That's what we do. People come to, they say, this isn't working, and then we work out what statutory and paid support they need. So we're missing all of that in the conversations. Just when you said that is the purpose of planning. And a lot of people still talk about planning and do planning, but then I think it's not always connected to budgets and then designing services. And the designing services comes at the very end. It comes after you've had all the conversations about what are the resources, about who you've got around you, and about what would make a good life. But once you bring the budget in, then you can start to think about how you might use that creatively to achieve some of that. Not just go immediately to, well, actually that'll be so many hours, a week support that you need. So absolutely, and that is something that seems to be missing in the process, and maybe somewhere in the skills set that we have. I think we need to help people work out how to do that planning better and give them skills to do it better. It's not rocket science. I'm not saying it is, but I think people need confidence, maybe more than anything, to do it, because I don't think it is that difficult. And a lot of the time it's just good person-centered conversations, and rather than big planning sessions, and people kind of think of planning that it has to be in a certain way. Don't get it wrong, that's absolutely valid and powerful and useful to have person-centered planning events and sessions for people. But actually, an awful lot of what we should be doing every day is person-centered conversation. So that everything that we do is then having that impact of thinking about people's lives and outcomes, and it's not an event. It's it's a process. You start and then carry on as you're working with people and supporting them in their life. So again, it's not something you do once and then walk away. And then every year you need to be continuing it throughout the time that you're supporting people, having those conversations, people's life change, and what they want to do next year, hopefully, will be very different from what they want to do in their life this year or what they've already achieved. And so you should be having those conversations and looking at that, bringing that budget in as a resource for those conversations and those opportunities every time there's an opportunity to do that.
Karen says she loves that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I love it too. I think it's just dead straightforward, but I think that's where we're going to go wrong. People turn up. This is what's available. We're still. I mean, it's not unlike Simon's original graphics around fitting people into services. It's that idea. And
Exactly.
I think we're still doing it.
And if the processes we use to make decisions about allocation of resource are the same ones we've been using before this whole new concept came out, then you're square peg in a round hole, isn't it? We're not going to be able to have those good conversations at the right time.
And I have to say, see, when you do plan with people in that way, it's so much stronger in terms of helping them get what they need and what they want in their life. So again, where people are getting stuck where, I don't know whether self-directed support can pay for this, or is that meeting somebody's out? If you do planning well with people and you're able to help them articulate that, and it's written up well, and you're sharing that, and I don't mean dead complicated, but just clear, then actually it's much stronger, and so it's much harder, because then you're able to look at the legislation, you're able to help people see that actually, this does fit. This is an outcome for this individual person, and we should be able to fund that. And people are able to achieve, I think, break down those barriers that are there easier if they've got that good plan in place. And certainly that's what I've found in a lot of the work that they're doing all the time. Is the clearer that plan is, the more success people have in achieving what they need to achieve in terms of getting self-directed support in general. But obviously, we're talking about individual service funds today, but other blocks, I think it because it was a new thing. If you think about how long it takes even for people to try and get their head around something like direct payments when it came in, and even then the uptake was really poor by the time we even started thinking about self-directed support. The uptake in direct payments was still really, really poor, wasn't it, in Scotland? And I mean, it hadn't exactly taken off like it was expected to. And I think that anything that's new or different just is very difficult for people to get their head around. There's something here though about, there was a massive expectation. Keith mentioned earlier on something about at the beginning when self-directed support legislation was coming in, there was a real belief that option 2 was going to be a thing that was going to be very real, and that everybody had to make real adjustments and changes to the way that they thought, the way they worked, and there was a lot of energy put into that. And then I think there was a realisation that by providers somehow, and people that might have taken up that role, that actually nobody's really pushing us to do that. So the local authorities fell back into, well, we'll need to find other ways if we're going to try and do it, or we'll just carry on doing what we're doing, or we'll do a wee bit of it over here. And they didn't push that option 2 because the providers really thought that's what was going to happen, and so there was a lot of preparation taking place, and now that's just like, well, we don't need to do it. So, nobody's really pushing us. So there's something about that. The system reboots itself back to what it knows and doesn't want to let go of power and control somehow. And it is a big shift in power and control, and how you think, how we trust each other within the system, trust people that we support and work for, and trust the families and trust organisations. It is a different way of kind of working that still, I think, is hard for organisations like hold that power.
Yeah.
But I think.
Absolutely. Fran, we actually don't really have very long now because we're on at 11:44, and we don't want to miss. So just want to give you the chance to say about some of the some of the things, I don't know, share any examples of things when you focused on those key elements, you know, just
Right,
about
I could tell a wee story because I think stories are always great, and I'm going to tell Laura's story because Laura's let me do that before. But I worked with Laura and her family to help her move house. Really, she was very stuck. She was in a house, and she had her own team, she had her own home, but she didn't have an individual service fund. She was getting service. It was fairly flexible, I would say, for her, and with lots of real positives. So I think there's real interesting things there about you can do so much of it, but it's those four elements that make the difference. So in the process of planning and thinking with Laura and her family and helping her move, which was became an issue in its own right, but we don't need to go into that. But it was quite tough that all the people that were involved, the providers that were involved, worked really hard together, and eventually she moved house on that individual service fund plan. And the difference in that plan was quite, in some ways, would seem quite subtle, but one of the things that was different for her was that she had a housekeeper. So Laura really struggled to with certain things that with staff providing care for her, and she would get really kind of maybe then it would move into other places in the day, and she would not be in a good place. So we worked with her to think about how that might be different, and she decided to get a housekeeper. So she moved near her sister and her dad. She had a budget which allowed her to spend some of that money on things that she was not allowed or able to spend before because it was all just tied up in support hours. The things that made sense in terms of things within a home, and also a housekeeper, which was probably quite challenging to the local authority at the time, but we got there, and that was all agreed in the end. Now the reason I'm thinking about Laura is because that happened ages ago. It's maybe a couple of years ago she moved in, just before Christmas to her new home, and I got a wee text just the other week from her sister saying, "I was just thinking about you, and I just wanted to let you know that Laura's having the best life. Before she was a prisoner in her home. She really felt isolated from her family. The way that the service was being provided was obviously very as positive as it could be, but it had its limitations. And now I think with her having the individual service fund, with them being very much more in control of how that budget's being used and everything, she's out, she's enjoying her life, she's got a different way of managing her relationships with people, and that housekeeper role has been amazing. That person comes in, goes shopping with her, helps her cook. She doesn't see this person as in the same way at all as maybe some of those other issues that she might find difficult in terms of getting, care. She sees this person as a person who's there to support her to develop those life skills and stuff. So I got this lovely message saying, just wanted to let you know that Laura's having the best life. And, so it doesn't need to, she still has her own team, still has her own house, but she has flexibility, she has access to the budget, she knows that she can spend that money on, and she's doing some things, even some small things, differently with that money. And I think those things subtly can change people's lives dramatically.
Brilliant.
I don't know if that's...
Yeah, that's really good, Frank, because I suppose what I'm sitting here thinking is that when, in the previous supports she had, nobody sat down to design something that made her a prisoner in her own home or that didn't give her a good life, but what they didn't do was give the attention to what really matters to her and what can be done, and that whole thing about, well, let's focus on what a good life for Laura would be.
To be fair, they worked really hard to try and give her a good life. So it wasn't at all about that, but without changing some of those fundamentals and really paying attention to what wasn't working for her and thinking about how could we do this differently, what could be creative about this, how could we use the money creatively to just change all of those dynamics and help her see life differently and how she was being supported differently. Then, by just doing those things, it's made that difference. The other part of being a prisoner was because she was absolutely isolated from her family. They lived too far away, so that move was very important. So it's looking at that whole picture. It's not an individual part of it. It's the whole picture, isn't it? And every individual situation is going to be different. And I've got loads and loads of great stories where people have just, just been able to take so much more control and be more creative about what they use the money for, and just get, better lives, really. I think the challenge, though, is still for the rest of us to make those changes to allow that to happen. And I think one of the things we didn't mention is it's hard for organisations where maybe they're running different and they're expected to run so many different systems. The system needs to be set up so that they are expected to operate within an ISF, and that they can report operating within an ISF and not kind of doing this on the side somewhere as a separate thing, and then they've got another organisation to run over here, and you can imagine that all creates work and it creates stress, and people aren't clear about how to do it. So there's a lot about the system that we need to change, isn't there, so that we're all setting it up to work and not setting it up to fail.
Absolutely, and such an opportunity now with at the dawn of a new national care service for us to think about these issues and influence the way that these systems and processes are set up, and hear all those collective amazing experiences and the difficult ones as well, to make sure that we're not creating more barriers to people having good control over their lives. There's Keith with one he prepared earlier.
That is, it is one I've prepared here. So that is the physical booklet. Obviously developed for In Control Scotland and printed through Citizen Network. And if anybody does want a copy of that, then please get in touch with us about that. If anybody, the other thing we were going to say at the end of this, Pauline, really was just this thing. If anybody is, because we've been trying to promote this way of working for lots of years, obviously. And if anybody is interested either in having a conversation with us about that, or working with us about that, or working through some things, some issues that are around either in your organisation or in the way that you get support, then please just get in touch with us, and we're happy to continue the conversation that we've only really touched the sides of a little bit here today, haven't we? Yeah, and sorry, we just got a comment here as well, and then we'll just go to any final comments, because we do need to finish, because we're at the end of our time, really. So Jim's just asking, how can we share some of these stories better, and challenge and use them to challenge? So that's
I think there's a real, sorry, I was just going to say there is a real opportunity. We probably do need to do some kind of relaunch around ISF and reinvigorate the fight, really, taking a push option to, and stories will be part of that. But I think maybe relaunching that book might be part of that. Might be a good time to kind of do a relaunch of it and get it out there, because people have forgotten about it, just that it exists. So I think there's things we could do to help and get some of those. We've talked a lot about those stories, Keith, and we never quite managed to capture them. But we definitely need to do that, don't we, more?
I definitely think there's big enthusiasm about it at the moment. I've had quite a few conversations. I've only been around this job for a couple of months, but every time I speak to somebody about it, people are, I think we've got a wee moment in time where people are dead interested, they are engaged, and they want to pick it back up with it and run with it again. So this is a big area for In Control Scotland. So if you're one of those people, give us a shout. We'll start getting the ball rolling as quickly and as well as we can. So come on board. But that's been an incredibly interesting chat, Fran. We could have spent another 2 hours, I think, speaking about this. But unfortunately, we've reached the end of our time, I think, together. So just a huge thank you to you, Fran. June, have we already shared the wee link to Radical Vision's website in case people want to find out a wee bit more?
Yeah, we did. We shared it earlier on. Yeah,
that's good. Yeah. Excellent. And just have a wee look at the resources that we shared in the comments, and definitely get in touch if you want to chat more. Have you got anything else you want to say, Keith?
No, just thanks to everybody for joining us, and if you want to, please get in touch. Yeah. And Webinar Wednesday will be back on the first Wednesday of March. Will be the next one.
Right.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.